Now, our next guest is doing his first ever UK convention, I believe. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. I am not wrong. And he is Mr. Aaron Archer. He started at Hasbro way back in '95. He was there almost 20 years. Started as a designer and went all the way up to Vice President of Creative Strategies, which is really impressive. He's been connected to the fandom for well over a decade, and he's a beloved con guest in the United States. So I think you're going to have a real treat. Let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Aaron Archer.
Standing's better. Standing's better. Yeah, this is more.
All right. So Aaron, since I don't think they really know you, I thought maybe it would be good to just start with sort of what your background is and how you got involved in Hasbro.
Yeah. I'll give a quick aside. These are files from my personal laptop of strange things that no one has ever seen. Old conventions, model photos, office photos, all kinds of stuff. So if anything triggers a question, please ask. I was a creative kid, always was. Drew Shogun Warriors and things like that as a kid, Godzilla. And through a long process of schooling and everything else, found my way into Hasbro after self-publishing some comic books in college and working at a gift card company. I started right out of school at Kenner.
At Kenner?
Yeah, it was Kenner. It was Kenner for about 2 years before episode 1 started coming in, and they took Hasbro as the main name.
So what was your first job at Hasbro?
I worked for 3 years on Batman. So, yeah, any animated series and movies and the comic book influenced things.
And what exactly were you doing?
I would do everything, the sculpt inputs, picking the colors, pitching to DC Comics. And that interface with the licensor was a big deal for me. And I kind of got into that, so I became a licensor liaison. So when episode 1 came along, I worked with Lucasfilm to get the toys approved for Hasbro. And then ultimately, I was creative, I could talk to people, I could talk to licensors. The relationship with Takara was a big deal, so that's how I ended up at Transformers.
You know, that's an interesting point, because I don't know if people necessarily think of Hasbro as having a license or relationship with Transformers because they own it, but of course, it is very much a partnership.
Yeah, it's a big partnership, so that relationship is with Yoke-san and communication. That was important, and you had to represent that well. Those two companies work well together. You don't want to mess that up. That's the old Kenner building. So it was important, and I was the guy to do it.
So, you know, you mentioned Yoke-san. Do you guys know who Yoke-san is? Yeah, some? You want to talk a little bit about it?
Well, I don't know what else can be said. Yoke-san is a Zen master. He started before there was a Transformers. He actually designed Biotron and made Micronauts. That's why Biotron is blue and red, and Optimus ended up being blue and red. And he's just an awesome dude, and was a great guy to work with and learn from. And he just retired 2 years ago. And he worked in the Hasbro office in the 80s, back when everything was done by phone. Amazing dude.
But you were telling me something just the other day. So when did you get your first computer at Hasbro?
Yeah. So I started in '95, and we were still making toys out of wood and styrene, and I didn't have a computer for 3 years before digital came into the picture. So I worked the old way at the beginning of my career.
It's hard to imagine working in an office setting without emails and spreadsheets.
Yeah, none of that. There was fax. We'd get a stack of faxes from Hong Kong every day, and you had to go through them and find the ones that were appropriate for you.
Were they mostly in English?
Yeah. Mostly.
And then how did you get your start with Transformers? Because I think that's what most of us are here for.
In 2000, they moved the offices. We were in the middle of America, and they moved us to the Rhode Island Hasbro office. And the people working on Transformers weren't interested in moving to Rhode Island. And I had the right seniority, and I said, you know, I would like to do Transformers. And it was the best thing I've ever asked for, because I got it, and it's off from there.
And what was the first Transformer toy that you worked on?
The first Transformer toy I actually worked on, Batman and Beast Wars were on the same team. So I was in the orbit of the guys that did all the Transformers and Beast Wars. And as an illustrator, the guy who ran the design wasn't really into drawing. I know that sounds funny. Yeah, but he was more into process and materials. You know, there's different types of designers. So he had me draw the Megatron Dragon. So that's probably, the Megatron Red Dragon is my first Transformer item.
Are there anybody here have the Megatron Transmetal 2 Dragon? All right.
And then Transmetals 2, I did a bunch of sketches for that became those toys. Whether that was good or bad, those are my first drawings for Transformers, but my first responsibility on Transformers wasn't until we came up with the collectible idea of mini-cons.
Well, and let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, how many fans here of Armada Energon Cybertron? How many people here was that their first exposure to Transformers?
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the Unicron trilogy.
I've been around the block. Yeah, the Unicron trilogy was cool. It was a transition time. Obviously, the Beast Wars show and the Beast Machine show had its own vibe, and new leadership came in and wanted to get back to the basics, get back to vehicles, get back to classic names, tactically in an effort to get to a point where you could make movies and video games and things. So it was all very much a plan, going all the way back to 2000, to create something that would catch fire. So the collectible idea of mini-cons was what we hit on. And then how do you make that work? The ports.
Any mini-con fans here?
One of my favorite contributions. I didn't invent the small robot, but naming the mini-cons and giving them that power role. I'm happy that still lives within the brand. It did die in Armada.
No. So I kind of want to stick on the Unicron trilogy a bit. So that was when you were starting to take on some more responsibilities, yes?
Yeah.
So how did your role evolve?
So I'm going to go at it a little angle. Around that same time, Dreamwave came on to do the comic books.
Sure.
And it elevated the need to have oversight. You know, they really didn't have anyone in the middle. They had people who did licensing, and then the people who created the stuff. They didn't have anybody who kind of explained to the licensing people what was actually going to happen. So I became that middleman to make sure the license things were connected to the products and efforts we were trying to do.
So is that why we had Armada comic?
Get all that licensing things going, and through that I kind of got more involved with our partnerships than I did the toys, and ultimately I kind of became a brand champion versus a toy designer. And I would talk to Activision, Michael Bay, Steven Spielberg, the cartoons, the comic books, and explain to them where we are, what we believe the brand is or isn't, or where we're heading, or where we want to head, and that relationship I was responsible for.
And I want to get to that, but let's stick with Dreamwave just for a little bit. So when Dreamwave...
there's the OK sign. They're in the way real quick.
But when Dreamwave came out with their Generation 1 series, they were the #1 selling comic book in North America. Did that catch you guys by surprise? What was the reaction around Hasbro's offices?
I don't know if it caught us totally by surprise, because that artwork was so dynamic and so hip for that time, like breakthrough. It was like one of the first anime-influenced comic books that went mainstream. So it was just exciting to, be part of that vibe at that time.
Did the success of the comics inform Hasbro's decision-making in any way?
A little bit. I mean, obviously, Dreamwave had their issues, so when we had to go to the next company, we had to have a different set of thought processes.
And I think that's a good transition. So, so you were talking about how did that factor into the decision with IDW?
They had a strong commitment that they wanted to do not just a licensed book and not just put out stuff that they knew would, I guess, sell, but they really wanted to tell stories, and they really wanted to enhance the brand, not just follow the toy line. And that's important for any evolved brand to have its own expressions in different formats, not just regurgitated toy promotion. So IDW really took that on, and obviously the stuff James does and everything, it's well beyond the toys, right? The brand is better for it.
And I think maybe the IP elephant in the room is it's got to be the Transformers film franchise. The film franchise.
Oh yeah.
So what was your role with that?
So we started working on the movie in like 2004 with producers. And then there was about a year where we were presenting to a lot of different people. I did pitch Michael Bay and some of the producers and people at Paramount. Some of the DVDs, they talk about Transformers 101, kind of a Transformers school. Michael Bay is referred to that. I was Transformers school. I was Transformers 101. I had to put a binder together to explain to him that they don't morph. They're not made by a mad scientist somewhere. They're metal men with a soul, and like what they really are. And through that process, it all went from there. Right?
Would that binder you put together be what eventually became the binder of Revelation?
No. This is when you think about the basics. What is transformation? What is Energon? What is a combiner? What is Cybertron? Very basic explanations for someone who wasn't going to read comics, wasn't going to watch movies or television shows, but you needed to, and that wasn't just Michael, that was the producers, that was anybody involved. Here's what we believe it is.
And then once that became a yes, once Transformers got greenlit as a film, then what was your ongoing role?
So being the design head, I ended up working in the movie department, art department, for about 3 to 4 weeks. 6 all told, but 3 solid in a row, and just I was there to talk to them, and if they needed reference to try to find it, if I could provide an answer. We focused on Bumblebee and Optimus clearly for the movies versus other characters, and Hasbro's role on the film was really just to make sure they were represented in the first film, represented in a way that was nostalgically right, if not accurately right. As the movies have progressed, that has not held, but that's how it went.
Sure. You were with the brand for, like I said, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Is there a particular toy that you're sort of most proud of or most excited about?
It's hard when you're a toy designer. Things come so fast. We design 250 Transformers a year. Every year that came out. Those aren't the exclusives. Those aren't the things that you pitch that didn't go anywhere. The models you make that didn't get made. So I remember the buzz of the highway more than the individual toys.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I love the Unicron trilogy just because for me as a young creator, I was very active in it. But alternators, I'm proud of.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about those. That was a real, any alternators fans here?
That's the guy who designed Optimus Prime for the movie, the young guy. There's me with a circle. Fat Aaron.
So with the alternators, was it challenging to get the car licenses?
Alternators, yeah, what you guys might not know is every car license is a different deal, a different set of responsibilities. The license holder maybe has different protocols for what gets approved or how fast that gets approved. So think of every alternator as a unique franchise.
Right.
And that made it very difficult. It was a lot of fun to get those cars and find the companies that would work with us. But but it was also frustrating that we had to keep to a size. I could never do a motorcycle or a jet ski or a helicopter. It always was a truck or a car. You know?
So who would have been the jet ski engineer?
I don't know. Beach cleaner.
I can see that. And you had a hand in the 20th anniversary Optimus Prime that ultimately sort of spawned the Master.
Yeah. So I kind of do take credit for originating the idea of Masterpiece. All due respect to Kobayashi, who made the Masterpiece. But I pitched that to my head of the company, like, let's do a big high-end item, and he saw the vision and gave me the money to make something that has lights and chrome rubber tires and a great box and everything. So, and at the time we were kind of rock and rolling. We were feeling our oats a little bit.
I gotta admit, 20th anniversary seems like a long time ago.
I know. I still call that item the 20th anniversary album.
Well, that's what it was.
Right.
That's how it was made. So I thought we would throw this over to some audience questions. So if you have something you'd like to ask, why don't you raise your hand? All right.
Hi. So there's a case in the article too, where there's a bunch of figure remakes that do powered up versions of existing characters with it. But when there was always toys, it was like the Starscream power up or something. Were there any other concepts that you designed with something in mind, and when it made it to the show, it was completely different?
No, at that time we were really focused. We were going to make, like, I laid out Armada, all the waves at the beginning. I knew what was going to come 18 months later. We had it all figured out, the Redeco's patterns and everything. So I don't know if we had any specific other ideas, but most everything that we needed, we made. So not a lot was left on the table. Laserbeak probably is the chief missed opportunity in that era. That item is not what we originally wanted.
What was the original idea behind this?
It was supposed to be like gray and like a camcorder and, you know, kind of a more role play item, but it ended up being a weird price, a very awkward color, and not a main character in the show. So
Hi. My question is about branding and masterpieces. Just in your opinion, is the reason that jazz hasn't been made yet a Porsche that tricky to deal with?
I'll be vague. I can only say that the German companies are more precise about how their automobiles are handled. And if you think of Transformers, there's a lot of brakes, a lot of panel lines that don't match up. The way you have to break a car or vehicle up doesn't jive with their belief that I've run into with how they perceive their clean line car. So it's an automotive thing versus a toy thing mostly, and they just, why do we need this ugly version of our car? It's pretty much how it goes. Back in the day, I do tell the story, we pitched a Volkswagen Bumblebee to Volkswagen. We had a German fellow that was working in the office. We called. Hasbro's had a relationship with any number of companies over the years, so you can call. And they basically said, do not ever call us back. They were like, we do not want your war robots. We're not interested, blah, blah, blah. And it took 10 years for them to come around, but I remember that day pretty emphatically. It was a little deflating that day to learn we're not going to get a Bumblebee Volkswagen. So, does that answer your... Cheers.
Hi there. First of all, just want to say thank you for all the work you've done with the brand Transformers. I think everyone here has probably had one of your toys at one time. This is maybe going to be an interesting question. Can you remember the first time, or just any interesting stories about any time you've went out or on the bus in the park and seen kids playing with toys that you personally had a hand in designing them?
We had a Toys R Us down the road from Hasbro. So the example I often talk about is we would go and look at the shelf and see what's happening, and when things would come, come out particularly, we'd go check it out. And there was one time where there was a mother and a child, and I saw the pure delight of a kid finding the Transformer item that they wanted, and a parent there to purchase it. And pure enjoyment, and it was an item that I designed and stuff. And that, you know, a lot of what we do is in a closed office amongst other, you know, middle-aged peoples, and you don't, you know, you're 14 to 16 months ahead of schedule, you know. So when things come out, you don't even know. So it's very rare, actually, to have a toy interaction, particularly with a child, which sounds strange, but so that's one that I highlight. You know, very satisfying. Because that's why I got, you know, that's why we really, toy designers at the bigger companies, the tradition was that you want to design toys for kids. It's only been in the last, we could call it decade really, that there's a whole other thing that you can consider what toys are. That's a higher ed, higher market, more collectible, you know, high dollar. But like most of my career is very kid driven.
So actually that brings to mind a question that I have. So were there not focus groups or play testing?
We would do, before we would do any work, we would maybe focus group, how do you feel about combining? But nobody in a focus group ever had the ability to change much. It was gaining insight about what we knew we wanted to do. And rarely did anything not jive. You know, we would hear things like, can the transformation be simpler? Can it be more intuitive? Things like that. And we'd work towards that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem.
But it's still a vague term. What's intuitive for a transformer?
That doesn't seem like an easy fix.
No, it's not.
All right.
Always kind of wondered if, for example, say in another world you stayed at Hasbro and Hasbro like plastic prices are really low, go crazy. Where would you have basically took the franchise? Would it still have gone the way it has, or did you have any
interesting
ideas?
question. I'm going to rephrase the question. If we could go back in time, some of the things that I still think this. Sometime around 2012, 13, 14, I just felt like we were saturated with cars and trucks. The movies, I mean, it was everywhere, right? How many Bumblebees and all of that. So I started pressing for Beast Wars coming back into 11 even. And I probably would, if I was still there pushing things, maybe there'd be animals on the shelf now, just for the sake of different. I mean, a decade long since RID came out, the first RID, it's been a lot of vehicles, you know, and it gets, just like it did in the 80s, it can get stagnant. And so, I don't know, I'm assuming we're due for some sort of shift. But as long as they keep making the movies, you're kind of committed to that path too. So, it's a tricky one. But I probably would have brought these back by now, in a big way, shifted a little bit.
One of the things I find fascinating about the Transformers brand in general is the way it sort of evolves from year.
Yeah.
There's almost never a year where the previous year's product is exactly like.
Yeah, what I like to say is the nature of Transformers has changed, and it's somehow also the nature of the brand. And it's just accepted that it just moves on.
Well, I
Contrasted with G.I. Joe, those fans in America are very locked in time. If it doesn't match the colors and the look and the design of what originated, it's not legit, it's not real, I don't want it. And Transformer fans have been always open to the next version of the character.
I think it's hard to imagine the Transformers brand being the powerhouse it is today, and as relevant as it is today, if...
That is the furnace that was at the bottom of the Hasbro factory that made all your favorite toys.
Oddities indeed.
Like I said.
But if all Transformers was the Diaclone and Microman style toys, you know, 386, 87, 88, even just that far, I can't imagine it would be as relevant as it is today. I think things like that. I
tell a story often, like in the 80s, they kept going further, right? The toy industry was such that every year we just need new, and you really never looked back. Now it's a little bit more of a loop back to the core of the idea. But back then, man, they just kept walking. And all of a sudden, they were making Transformers that weren't transforming, right? We tried to hold that to a different standard. That's also at the bottom of the old Hasbro factory. Those are weird light switches for phones that don't exist and are still lit up. It was strange. It was bottom, I don't know.
Weird light switches that don't exist? I'm not sure I follow.
It was at the bottom of the factory. It just looked like a ghost machine. That's
one of my favorite, and I'll get back to your questions, but one of my favorite Transformers franchises ever was Transformers Animated. So that's sort of right between what was going on with the Align continuity that you came out and the Energy. So how did that come about?
Transformers Animated came about just for the cycle I just talked about. Through the Unicron trilogy, there was a style of toy and a shape of toy and a package layout that was consistent. And you always, in the toy business, you have to kind of make a splash, right? So it was time to change up the game. So we wanted to can we do a more anime form? Can we have like thigh muscles and forearms and stuff, and treat them as a different style of character? And can we do that in a model? And that was a test for us. And we made some models. I think I have a picture somewhere in here of one of them. And then Cartoon Network got on board, and we kind of massaged this really interesting new approach to and what animated became. Now, how many fans of animated are there? Was this a big deal here? What was unfortunate about animated was the movie came and changed the perception of what Transformers was to a larger extent of people. Not you guys, but the public at large. And it got like swallowed up. It was like the wrong look then at the wrong time. And it died a premature death, if you ask me.
Yeah, although I gotta say, 3 years feels like it was good. About.
I believe that we got a giant almanac out of it.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
In Transformers Animated, there was a character inspired by you, Angry Archer. I was wondering what you feel having a character inspired by you, and if you'd like him to show up again.
Yeah, the Angry Archer was funny. I didn't know they were doing that, and then it showed up, you know. They had to get some weird approvals because of Hasbro, worried that I was going to sue Hasbro because they used my name. But it was nice. To be honest, I made 2 requests. I got one of them. I didn't get the other. I didn't want to be my name's Aaron Archer, and I've been inundated with Robin Hood my whole life. So the fact that he was like in that green outfit, I was just like, it like triggered everything, right? So I said, well, left-handed, can you give him like, if these guys are fighting robots, they should have a mechanical element to them, right? So that's how I got the left mechanical arm. So I got that. I didn't get the color, but I was very satisfied with it. It's funny. I really was never that angry, so I don't know where that came from. I was very serious with Cartoon Network about what they could or couldn't, where we wanted to go or didn't. So maybe that's what triggered that.
I feel like the serious Archer doesn't have the same ring to it.
Yeah, maybe. So I tell everybody that after the series, the Angry Archer, he retired. He now runs a retro electronics store selling 8-tracks and Commodore 64s. And so that's what he's doing now.
That's canon. That's canon, right?
That's canon. That's what he does. Retro electronics.
Well, you also did War for Cybertron. Well, I mean, that's one of my favorite Transformers games.
Yeah.
How was that like? Contributing to video game?
I'll say it the easiest way I can say it. When you work with great partners, it's really easy. And the guys who made at High Moon and Activision who made those games, they were pros. And we had a lot of fun then at a higher level, thinking the story through, thinking the design through. One of the things that we always talked about is, you know, Cybertron shouldn't just be a place with metals, bridges and doors, and like the doors should transform, you know, change, and as you walk, the bridge should move and stuff, right? That'd be transformery. And so they got into some of that, like, you know, plug in and fire the big gun and stuff. So getting that into the IP was a big excitement for me because it was a little bit different than we could present in any other format. But the guys who designed the robots and we did the storyline, it was all very collaborative and really a satisfying experience.
You know, we've talked about the films and the cartoons and the toys, but we haven't really talked much about how the games came about. Because there's sort of a drought in Transformers video games. There's some in the 80s and then not much for a long time.
Transformer games it's a difficult thing for the companies to deal with because you have to do a lot more work. You know, usually you work really hard to design your one character and he looks good from the back as he's shooting and all that. Adding the transforming element and then having two kind of play modes, no matter what the company was or what the game was, that was always difficult because you're asking for a lot more work to be done just to communicate the basic idea, and then you have to make it a great game.
Sure.
And that was always a tricky one.
So did the game companies tend to come to Hasbro seeking a license, or was Hasbro more looking for partners?
Kind of both. I mean, Hasbro, it's like peanut butter and chocolate. It's like two big companies that work in industries. You know, let's work together. And that was my last day at Hasbro. I shaved the beard and I waved it off.
Can I just ask? You know, G.I. Joe had the 7-foot-long aircraft carrier during the 80s. What would have been the ridiculous, huge-scale Transformers project you'd like to have made but were never allowed to?
I'm going to surprise you, it's a little bit of a zag. It wasn't a traditional Transformer, but I had pitched and got approved to do a Jumbo Machinder Optimus, Shogun Warrior style. And it was going to be the last toy I physically designed, because by then I was doing other stuff. I was going to follow the format, you know, with pieces that could get lost and add to the value and the whole thing. And we couldn't figure out how to ship it in. It was before the Stormtroopers and the Kylo Rens, you know, being dropped off in the middle of the pallet at the store. So Hasbro wanted to chop his legs off and put him in a box, and so that's the one that gets me. As far as, and it would be big. I lived in an era where they didn't have the tooling budget for super big. You know, Unicron and Omega Supreme for me were big. Now they're doing Triptychon and stuff, and that flips my switches. I never had a label sheet that big. That label sheet alone is $1 in the hard cost. That's crazy. All mine were like 5 cents. So that stuff's already at a scale that's beyond anything I would have done. So I can't imagine.
This isn't so much a question, I guess, as a thank you. So back in 2011, you recall Hasbro did the sort of Hall of Fame at various BotCons, and obviously they opened that up to the fans, the fan sites, and yeah, so in 2011 they put it up on TFW 2005, and I put the first response up saying, if Erector doesn't win this, I'm going to eat my hat. So firstly, I kind of wanted to apologise for what happened, but secondly, I just wanted to say thank you to you, because I understand that me and a few other guys came from the UK, we went across to BotCon, firstly because it was animated, which was incredible that year, but secondly because obviously the whole...
So you saw the Erector video?
We saw the Erector video, so I just wanted to say, number one, thank you for being such a great sport about it, and number two, is anybody ever going to get to see that again?
Probably not. Probably not. I don't know if everyone knows the story, but Erector was nominated for the Hall of Fame, and because it was nominated by the fans, we took it seriously. And it's like, well, you could have Shockwave or, you know, Erector, okay. So, when we were doing these videos, it was kind of like a great opportunity to kind of have a lot of fun. And, you know, I'm well past the line now, so I can say it. I spent a lot of money to make that video, to get all those artists to draw in their style, do all that stuff. And I'm like, screw it, let's pretend he was there, you know? And so that was a ball to do. There were a couple people who the name alone was going to offend them no matter what, and the fact that we took a little fun with it offended them a little more. And very puritanical attitude. Yeah, but we stood behind it, yeah, a little bit. We stood behind it, but it was claimed that that was it. That was special for the event. Yeah. But I thank you for calling that out. Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask about your toy designs in terms of color palette and everything? What do you think when the Japanese get a hold of your designs and do their color palettes?
It doesn't bother me. We often felt, less so now, that there were just two different color palettes. The Takara designers, they like a pure color, more primary, without any gray or anything added to it to tone it any which way. Whereas in America, we have this arrogant designer thing. Let's have high-end colors, stylish colors, and so that was the difference. Ours would be darker.
Have you always tried to insist that it's to make it as short and accurate as possible?
Yeah. Well, Takara they ran the shows for Unicron Trilogy, so it would match their colors more than the Hasbro colors for sure.
Because I mean, Scorpion was pretty much Hasbro accurate. So did Starscream and then John. But then you have a look at Armada Prime.
Yeah.
Why didn't you go back?
Yeah. Okay, we have another one. Sorry, I got another one over here. Hi. How much artwork goes into designing a toy? Roughly, says it.
It depends on the process of the toy development. At the beginning of a line, there's my dino bot. We would kind of do a lot of work, a lot of pre-production, full color, battle scenes, all kinds of designs and ideas, really. And then that was at the beginning of the line. And then that's the animated test toy right there to see if we could get a different format of body. That's a one-off. As you develop an individual toy, it's whatever you need to communicate. So usually a presentation drawing to sell it into management or explain what you're going to do, and then just control art or technical art. In the case of Transformers, it was a lot of we'd focus on aspects of like head design and things like that. But we didn't really care about the wires and bolts and things. That was Takara model makers doing whatever they wanted to do. But everything got a little bit of drawing, but we did all our big art up front.
And just because I saw the Beast Hunters video out there, we haven't really talked about Transformers Prime at all.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, the success of the films and everything, Hasbro built towards having their own studio and their own channel, and it was just the right time after the films. And Transformers was one of the jewels for this opportunity. So they pulled a team together, and it fits the movie universe more as a result, because they wanted to capture the movie fans, at least from the original, get them in the door because of the movie, and then they'll realize what Prime can be. At that point, that was a new set of creative management, so I no longer needed to worry as much about the cartoon, because now Hasbro had a development team that was on staff to worry about that. But that didn't mean they overlaid the toy plan any better or worse. So there's a lot of dark villains. There's no military vehicles. That was a decision they made. So it was a good experience. It was just different for me.
What was your specific role?
Just brand. I was just there often for any partner, really, partnerships. That's the strategy part of the creative strategy. As they needed to write stories or use characters, or we wanted them to not use characters, communicate that.
Were there any characters that weren't used?
Yeah, like, and we're not going to use Unicron, was a big one. You know, I don't think, well, for Prime they did, but like for other shows, we'd push it out, or comics, you know. But I can't think of any.
Hi. You've mentioned Hasbro as a kind of concept a couple of times. How did that work corporately? Who was making like the decisions, deciding how the line should go? Who were your bosses? Did they understand?
The way it works there is it wasn't like I went up to a tribunal and had to convince somebody like, please let me make this. As professionals on the team, we had our market research, our goals, partnerships, and we would present what we wanted to make. And they would give guidance, you know, and then there's a back channel kind of budgeting about commercials and sales materials and stuff that would happen. But I was very fortunate that when I say Hasbro decided, I'm part of maybe 3 or 4 people that Hasbro decided that helps. Me, Brian Chapman, Samantha Lomo, you might have heard those names, I don't know. A guy named Steve Drucker. There weren't too many of us on the ground working all the time, so management couldn't come in and torpedo us too much because there was this giant, delicate framework with Takara and these companies that they couldn't just come in and go, hey, change that to this, because it would interrupt everything. So I had a charmed experience, to be honest, where I wasn't getting a lot of hassle.
So, yeah, since you mentioned Takara again, how often did you get to go to Japan?
3 to 5 times a year during my time there, and they would come probably that many times as well. We saw Takara every month and a half, easy, whether it was at a Comic-Con or a BotCon or go to their offices or vice versa. So there was, I always like to tell people, don't think of it as Hasbro and Takara. Think of it as a Transformers team in 2 locations working together to make those products for the world. That's really how it works. And then they have their own market, of course, and can do what they want to do. This is my office today. But we were partners, so we weren't fighting about, I want it this way, or I want it that way. You know, if they wanted it a different way, they would just make it that way.
What was your first trip to Japan for Hasbro?
My first trip to Japan was for a Tokyo Toy Fair in 2001. I flew coach on my own dime to be part of that meeting, and it proved that I was serious, and I never had to do that again. Use my frequent flyer miles. I used to do Lucasfilm approvals, like I said, and I got a lot of miles through that process going to San Francisco. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool. More questions? No? That was fast.
Yeah. Jellies and Stringers, my favourite Transformers toy you've ever made. What's the favourite toy you've ever worked on?
That's a tough one, because I've had influence, and then I've had my hand on some of them. The ones that I've physically drawn, Unicron and Armada Megatron are the ones that, and the Red Dragon are the ones that feel the most like my designs, or if I was just drawing robots, that's what they would look like. So I like those. Probably the most.
Just so you guys know, we're about 5 minutes from the end of the panel, so we're going to only have a couple more questions.
That was an Armada pitch drawing.
I saw in your office you had a Mazinger statue and like an image of Mazinger by Go Najee. Has that influenced some of your work in the past? Did Go Najee's work like Mazinger influence you in the past?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I love, like, I'll talk all about it, like, I love it, like, so yeah, I still collect them. Is that okay? Yeah, so I have demos. I sold some of my, now I'm into the diecast guys.
Hi, Aaron, I'm sorry if this is the last question, and it's probably going to be horribly worded because I don't even quite know what I'm asking here. But I just want to know the logistics of actually designing a Transformer boggles my mind. And I'm just wondering, would you create the designs and then just hand it off to engineering and be done with it, or can you do that? Is that a method by which it works?
We use every method possible to design the toys. Sometimes it was a drawing like this, and Takara would just go make a model. Sometimes it was real technical back and forth about where the details should be. Sometimes I would give inputs of, like, I think Jetfire's wing should end up here, not down here. That would influence the transformation process. We did it every way. We'd do concept models that they would embellish. But to be clear, the model makers that Takara would work with, and their artists that would veneer even the work we would do into that style, that three-quarter style, they're really the people who put that finishing touch of the look onto the toy. So we didn't have to like design every little bit, right? They added some of that detail, because it would be maddening to define every little aspect. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Did you ever have a toy that was designed where you worked out what he should look like roughly in the vehicle mode, and then the engineers just couldn't make the transformation work? Is that not?
No, some things will get costed out. Like Armada smokescreen I talked about was supposed to have like legs that came out to make the crane stable. You know how they, and that little bit got taken out. So usually just little costly things. No big pictures.
Hi there. Just wanted to ask about any thoughts about the quantity of girls and the girl toys in the franchise, as in like characters and girls about Lucy, etc.
Yeah. If I heard you right, the state of female characters in the brand. Yeah. I mean, I stand here very humbly. In my time, through the toy process, you know, making female characters was a bad math equation for sales. The research was such at that time that boys will reject all if there's one. It was really crazy. And that still holds in people's mentality, but in the decade since, you know, it's changed. And I love that, you know, Windblade and all these characters have come to the forefront and been a more full, realistic view of the Transformers, right? So, you know, I humbly take kind of like, it's a bummer to me that I didn't do more, but it was impossible. Really, it was impossible. But it's exciting, you know, what James does. Like, it's exciting where it is now. It's a full story. It's a proper brand to follow, not just a toy line.
What are your opinions on the new companions Armada Megatron? Do you think it lives up to what the original figure was?
Well, I spoke to how the Armada Megatron fits my design style. When they did that recolor, redeco, the proportions changed, and I don't see it the same way. Albeit it was very charming that character survives, you know, Hot Shot, some of the characters I originated, that they still live on. It's nice that it lives on, you know.
I love this silhouette.
I like horn. I put horns on everything. That's one of my trademarks. Too many years on Batman, honestly.
Thank you very much for coming up and sharing the insight.
Thank you. Please come.